The first warning wasn't the siren. It was the air itself. Hot, still, heavy with dust and the faint copper tang of old shell casings. Rachel Hayes had been bent over a stack of encrypted reports in the command tent when the ground shivered beneath her boots. A fraction of a second later, the siren screamed. 1400 hours. Right on schedule. Outside, the world erupted. The sharp, metallic chatter vacay. 47 fires shredded the afternoon quiet like a swarm of wasps loose into the sky. An RPG slammed into perimeter wall, showering the base in rock and wire. The sky itself seemed to tear open, and Rachel knew the fight for forward operating base thunder had begun. Captain Marcus Webb burst through command tent, his jaw tight, his eyes already searching for someone to bark orders at. He spotted Rachel's small frame, glasses smudged with dust, uniform a size too big, and his scowl deepened. His M4 jammed as he fired toward the breach, the bolt locked halfway back. Cursing, he ripped it free and shoved it into her hands. "Take it, Secretary. At least pretend you know which end shoots." His words were coated in contempt, the kind of bitterness he'd never bothered to hide. He saw Rachel as paperwork and wasted rations, nothing more. But Rachel caught the rifle with smooth hands, checked the safety selector, and gave the charging handle a pull that looked too fluid, too practiced, for someone who supposedly lived behind a desk. Ramirez, the 19-year-old private crouched beside her, blinked. He'd seen his drill instructors handle rifles with that kind of ease. Not clerks. Another RPG screamed overhead and slammed into a nearby bunker, knocking them all to the ground with a rain of dust and concrete. Webb spat grit and roared at her. "Move, Hayes. Don't stand there like you're on parade." But Rachel didn't move. She was staring east, toward the ridge. Her gaze was steady. Her pupils narrowed against the glare. In her eyes, something flickered calculation, cold and sharp. And in that instant, despite the desert heat baking their skin, Ramirez swore the air turned icy. Exactly 15 minutes from now, everything at Thunder would change. FOB, Thunder wasn't much to look at, even on good days. A pocket of concrete and sandbags in the middle of Helmand Province, surrounded by HESCO barriers that now seemed laughably fragile against the storm rolling down the ridgeline. 50 soldiers, most of them young, most of them tired, all of them about to be tested harder than they'd ever imagined. Rachel had been here 6 months, and to most she was invisible. The soft-spoken sergeant who typed faster than anyone, who managed radios and supply requests, who didn't complain about the heat or the food. What they didn't know, every morning, without thinking, she checked the wind by tossing a pinch of sand into the air. What they didn't notice, the old dog tags she wore, their numbers worn nearly smooth, as if someone hadn't wanted them read. "Hayes, supply bunker. Now, bring more mags." Webb barked, his voice rising above mortar thumps, walking closer to their position. Webb was every inch the poster soldier, broad-shouldered, loud, built like a linebacker, the kind of officer who believed muscle and volume made up for tactics, and the kind who had said, just yesterday, in front of the entire platoon, "Sergeant Hayes is dead weight, but regs say we need admin staff, so we make do." Now, those words felt like a curse waiting to be answered. At 14:15, the first wave came. Taliban fighters poured over the ridge in a dark tide, yelling war cries that tangled with the shriek of their rifles. It was like watching a hive split open dozens, then hundreds of figures charging down the slope. The perimeter wall rattled under the weight of their assault. Rachel moved through the chaos toward the supply bunker, Ramirez hot on her heels. She slowed, listening past the chaos, tilting her head. Beneath the machine gun roar was a different sound. A single, deliberate crack thump. Sniper fire. She narrowed her eyes toward the northeast ridge. 800 meters, she muttered, behind that rock cluster. Ramirez frowned. "What?" "Sniper. Northeast. Tell Webb to shift second squad 20 meters south, or they'll be cut down." The kid hesitated, then sprinted back. Webb, red-faced and screaming into his useless radio for air support, dismissed the warning with a wave. Seconds later, the Dragunov cracked again. A soldier from second squad dropped, clutching his shoulder. Webb froze, eyes wide. Rachel wasn't surprised. She didn't wait for validation. She reached the supply bunker just as a mortar hit close enough to rattle her teeth. Inside, she moved quickly, slipping magazines into her vest not haphazardly, but in precise order, separated by touch, ready for combat reloads. She grabbed 2 rifles, checked their actions with practiced efficiency, and slung them across her back. Support personnel didn't move like that. No one saw her, though. Everyone was too busy trying not to die. By the time Rachel returned to command post, the battle had deteriorated. The enemy was inside the wire. Webb was bellowing orders that nobody could hear. The ground littered with bodies and brass. Fall back to secondary positions. He screamed, then spotted Rachel. His face twisted. Where the hell are those magazines? Before she could answer, his eyes landed on the rifles across her back. What are you doing with those? You're qualified expert on PowerPoint, not rifles. An RPG streaked overhead and blew apart the comms antenna. Sparks rained down. Webb spun toward her again, jaw working. Rachel, crouched behind a barrier, barely heard him. Her focus was on the southwest ridge, where the enemy's movements were too clean, too coordinated. Not chaos. Direction. Someone was running this assault with precision. She murmured to herself. Southwest, 6 degrees right of the burned-out truck. That's where he is. Webb grabbed her shoulder, his grip painful. Enough guessing games. You want to play soldier? Fine. Here. He shoved his malfunctioning M4 back into her hands with a sneer. Try not to shoot yourself. Princess. Rachel didn't answer. She'd already dropped to one knee, stripping the rifle in seconds. Ramirez watched, slack-jawed, as she cleared the jam with movements too fast, too confident to be luck. 8 seconds later, the weapon was back together, functional, ready, and Rachel Hayes, the quiet secretary of FOB Thunder, was no longer invisible. The rifle felt wrong in her hands, not because she didn't know it, but because it had been mistreated. The bolt dragged like it was moving through sand. The barrel reeked of carbon buildup. Webb had complained for weeks about its unreliability, and now he tossed it to her like a cruel joke. But Rachel's hands moved with instinct. Bolt locked back, chamber checked, casing ejected. Tap, rack, release. Her fingers worked faster than thought, guided by repetition drilled into muscle long ago. Ramirez gawked. How did you? He didn't finish, because incoming fire slammed into the barrier in front of him, spraying chips of concrete across his face. He flinched. Rachel didn't. Her eyes were already lifting, scanning the ridge with a calm, detached focus of someone watching patterns unfold. The noise around her was overwhelming shouts, gunfire, explosions, but she filtered it the way others filtered music. Separate the rhythm from the noise. Find the meaning in the chaos. Southwest Ridge, 600 meters. Coordinated bursts, rotating fire teams. Someone was running this assault like a chess match. Webb tried to snatch the rifle back from her hands. Give me that. Hayes, you'll waste ammo and get someone killed. Rachel didn't look at him. They're shifting fire. Next mortar volley will hit the op center. He blinked. What? But before he could dismiss her again, the first mortar round slammed into the dirt 20 yards from the operations tent, spraying shrapnel across the courtyard. Soldiers dove for cover. The next round landed closer. Ramirez's face drained of color. Webb just stared at her like she was some kind of witch. Rachel stayed crouched, methodically loading her vest, checking each magazine with a tactile memory that told her which was ball ammo and which was tracer. The motions were efficient, automatic, the way a pianist runs scales without needing to hear the notes. For the first time since the battle began, Ramirez noticed something no one else had seen. Beneath the dust on her collarbone was a scar. Round, deep, with ridges that spread like sunbursts. Not from shrapnel, not from burns. The kind of scar left behind by years of a rifle stock pressed into the same spot, over and over. Thousands of hours of practice written into her flesh. He swallowed hard. Sergeant, who are you really? The eastern wall crumbled under RPG fire. Taliban fighters flooded through the breach, their war cries echoing across the yard. Chaos spread like wildfire. Soldiers shouted orders that couldn't be heard. Blood pooled beneath a downed machine gunner. Rachel moved, not like the others, who sprinted clumsily from cover to cover, but like someone flowing through a plan she'd already run in her head. Low, fast, efficient. She dropped behind a half-collapsed barrier, set her sights, and fire-controlled pairs into the breach. 3 fighters dropped before anyone realized it was her shooting. Ramirez stared. "You just... reload." Her voice was calm, clipped, commanding. He obeyed without question, as if he'd been following her for months instead of minutes. In the command net, Colonel Thompson's voice cracked through the static. "All stations, Thunder 6. Air support is 15 minutes out. Repeat, 15 minutes. Hold until then. 15 minutes." They'd never last unless someone shifted the momentum. Rachel keyed her radio without realizing. Southwest Ridge. Enemy commander directing fire. 2 RPG escorts. Recommend suppression before they shift mortars again. The net went silent. Then Thompson's voice came back, uncertain. "Say again, who's calling that?" Rachel had already switched frequencies, ignoring the question. She adjusted her sights, her breathing falling into a rhythm that didn't match the chaos around her. In, out, in, hold. She'd done this before, 1,000 times. Webb crouched beside her again, his face twisted with fury. "Enough. You're not in command here. You're not even supposed to be on the line." His voice broke on the last word as another burst of fire swept overhead. His anger sounded hollow now, brittle. He reached for her rifle again. Rachel's eyes snapped to him, cold as glass. "Captain, either help or get out my way. People are dying." The authority in her tone stopped him in his tracks. For the first time, Marcus Webb, the man who believed muscle and rank made him untouchable, actually hesitated. Ramirez, wide-eyed, whispered, "She's right." Rachel slipped into prone, her cheek settling against the stock as if the rifle belonged there. The battlefield noise faded. Wind speed, 5 meters per second, left to right. Heat shimmer, heavy distortions at long range. Distance, 780 meters. The M4 wasn't meant for this. Damaged barrel, iron sights, foul chamber. Any sane soldier would call it impossible. But Rachel wasn't aiming with sanity. She was aiming with muscle memory built in fire and blood. She steadied her breath, her world narrowing to a single figure half hidden on the ridge. A man gesturing. Bodyguards flanking him. The unmistakable posture of command. The trigger slack gave beneath her finger. The moment stretched thin, time moving between heartbeats. This was the place she always found the stillness where everything aligned. Then the rifle clicked. Dead trigger. Jammed again. Her chest tightened. The commander was already moving. 3 seconds before he vanished behind cover. Rachel's hands blurred. Tap, rack, bang. The drill executed with violence. Clearing the chamber, feeding the next round. She was back on target before Webb finished cursing. And then silence in her head. Just one breath, one sight picture, one squeeze. The rifle bucked. Through the heat shimmer, 800 meters away, the commander's head snapped back. A pink mist blossomed and his body crumpled into the dirt. For a second, the battle didn't notice. Then the Taliban assault faltered. Orders stopped coming. Fighters looked over their shoulders, confused, leaderless. The tide shifted in real time, and Thunder's defenders felt it in their bones. Ramirez exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. "Holy you, actually." Webb just stood there, binoculars shaking in his hands. He muttered to himself, almost a prayer. Nobody makes that shot. Not with that rifle. Not at that range. Nobody. But Rachel was already moving, her body flowing into the next firing position. Scanning for targets, her voice steady as she called out corrections and distances. To the soldiers around her, it was like watching a stranger wear Rachel Hayes' face. Not a secretary. Not an admin clerk. Something else. Something older. Something they weren't supposed to see. The ghosts in the shadows. For a breath, nothing changed. Guns still barked along the wall. Dust hung in the heat. Someone screamed for a medic. The ridge seemed to hold its breath with the rest of them. Then the net cracked with frightened voices that weren't theirs. Enemy chatter rose and tangled, the clipped staccato of men who had lost the one voice holding them together. Fighters near the breach faltered, half-turned, and took a step the wrong way. It was like watching a wave break and lose its shape. Pushed to the wire, Rachel said, steady as a metronome, control pairs. Don't chase. Let them make the mistakes. Ramirez moved when she did. He didn't think about rank or the chain of command anymore. He just mirrored her and trusted he'd survive that way. They advanced a few meters to better cover and cut down 2 fighters trying to drag a recoilless rifle toward the breach. Across the yard, Webb stood fixed in place with binoculars glued to his eyes. Rachel had never seen a man that large look so small. He watched the ridge, lower the glasses, then raise them again like his vision might give him a different answer. Finally, he swallowed hard and keyed his radio. Thunder Actual, this is 1. Be advised, enemy command element appears neutralized. Repeat, command element neutralized. His voice wavered. He cleared his throat and forced iron back into it. Consolidate. Don't get greedy. Colonel Thompson came over the net, calm but tight. Copy 1. Air is 8 mics out. Hold your lanes. Whoever took that shot, come up on my net. Static. A beat of silence. Rachel didn't respond. The ridge spat a last angry burst, random and wide. The attackers were still dangerous, just no longer organized. Thunder's machine guns found their rhythm again. Mortars shifted to harassment fire that landed short or long. The hard edge of the attack had been sanded off in a single heartbeat. Ramirez exhaled and finally looked at her. I don't understand how you did it. We're not done, Rachel said. She kept scanning, adjusting. You good on ammo? He checked. 2 mags plus partial. She tossed him one from her vest without looking. Make them count. Webb hustled over, breath ragged. Sweat ran in muddy tracks through the dust on his face. He stared at her, then at the rifle in her hands, then back at the ridge. That was you. It wasn't a question. Rachel didn't answer. She shifted to the left and put 2 rounds into a fighter edging around the wreck of a Humvee. The man folded into the dirt. Webb flinched at the neat finality of it. Thompson again, sharper now. Whoever is calling wind and distances, report. Rachel clicked to a different channel, spoke 3 words to a squad leader pinned near Tower 2, then clicked off. The habit lived in her bones. Help where it mattered, and avoid the spotlight that never helped anyone. The siren's moan dropped in pitch as power flickered. In the lull, something new grew under the gunfire, a chop that slid into hearing like a storm cresting the horizon. Ramirez looked up first. Birds. They came in low and fast. 2 black shapes skimming the ridge like predators working the coastline. No unit flashes. No paint worth speaking of. Door guns already hot. The sound of their rotors was tighter than the Medi birds' thunder knew. Different blade. Different job. They flared hard over the FOB. Ropes dropped before the skids kissed her. Figures rode the ropes down, heavy with kit, faces hidden behind glasses and paint. They moved without shouting. They didn't have to. Everyone in their orbit seemed to understand what to do or get out of the way. Webb took an involuntary step back as the first team flowed past. One of the operators cut a glance at Rachel and hesitated almost imperceptibly, just long enough to file away the impossible sight of an admin sergeant working a foul M for like it was born to her hands. Then he went where he was needed. The base changed shape around them. Fire that had been reactive became deliberate. Gaps sealed. The ugly open angles of the breach narrowed into a kill funnel. Within minutes, the push from the ridge turned into scattered knots of men running for cover that no longer existed. Thompson's voice was quieter now, almost level. All stations, hold what you got. Air in 5. Begin casualty collection and prep for case vac. Good work. A door gun stitched the hillside and broke a boulder into gray powder. The second helicopter banked and hosed a rock shelf that had sheltered a mortar tube. The tube flipped end over end and vanished into scrub. Ramirez slumped against a barrier and let his head tip back. He looked like a kid at the end of a bad school day, finally allowed to breathe. Is this what it's like? He asked, voice small. Rachel reloaded again, hands moving without thought. Sometimes it's worse. Webb pulled himself together by degrees. He keyed his mic with a practice roll of the thumb and started doing what he knew how to do. Count, sort, assign. His voice steadied as he talked. He could be useful again as long as he didn't think too hard about what he had just seen. Above the heat haze, a third helicopter appeared. Bigger, boxier, antennas bristling like a porcupine. It circled once, assessing, then settled near the operations tent where the dust lay thickest. The door opened with hydraulic grace. The woman who stepped out made Thompson straighten, as if a wire had been yanked inside his spine. Stars at her collar, dark hair pulled tight, expression that said she had no time for ceremony, but would tolerate it if it kept the machine moving. General on the ground, someone said, and it rippled without being repeated. The operators folded toward her like iron filings, sliding along a magnet. A graying master sergeant peeled off and jogged obliquely, checking sectors as if every footfall mattered. He passed close to Rachel, and for a split second his mouth slanted in a look that was half surprise, half recognition. It vanished as quickly as it came. Ramirez caught it. "Do they know you?" Rachel kept her eyes on the ridge. "Watch your lane." The lull snapped in two as three stragglers tried to sprint the last 10 meters to the breach with a satchel charge. Rachel took one. Ramirez clipped another, and a door gun cut the third in half a second that felt longer. The satchel rolled, smoking. An operator slid in on his knees, scooped it, and hurled it back to the opening just before it cooked off. The blast thumped their chests and kicked a plume of earth into the air. Silence fell in a ragged way after that. You could still hear shots, but they were single cracks chasing single targets. The wave was gone. All that remained were eddies and the ugly work of sorting what was left. "Thunder 6, came the air controller's voice. "2 mics out. Stack is clean." "Copy," Thompson said. He stepped away from the LZ and toward the line where Rachel and Ramirez crouched. He scanned the breach, then looked at Rachel with a frown that wasn't disapproval. So much as a puzzle he was determined to solve. "Sergeant Hayes," he said. She turned. "Sir." "Who made the ridge shot?" She gave him the smallest shrug. "Unknown, sir." Ramirez's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Thompson, then at Rachel, and decided saying nothing was smarter. The general reached them before Thompson could push. She didn't waste breath on greetings. "Colonel." She nodded at Thompson, then studied Rachel's face like she was verifying a photo against a memory. Up close, her gaze wasn't cruel, just painfully direct. "You have a name, Sergeant?" "Rachel Hayes, ma'am." The general's jaw ticked. Something like relief moved behind her eyes, so slight you'd miss it if you blinked. "We'll speak after you secure your sector." She shifted to Webb without changing temperature. "Captain, your comms discipline was poorer. Your perimeter, however, is still standing. Fix the first to ensure the second continues." It wasn't a rebuke for show. It was maintenance notes from someone who had rebuilt a lot of engines and didn't plan to stop today. "Yes, ma'am," Webb said. His voice should have sounded resentful. It didn't. It sounded grateful to be given a task he could execute. The first medevac bird dropped into the cleared pad and flung a rotor wash that tried to shove everyone a step backward. Litters appeared from nowhere. Medics moved like a drill. They could run in their sleep, but never did. The graying master sergeant came back, this time stopping a meter from Rachel. He removed his glasses, wiped grime with a thumb, and hooked them on his vest. "Long time," he said, low enough not to carry. His eyes were careful. He wasn't sure if he was looking at a ghost or a consequence. Rachel considered him for half a beat. "You still limp when you're tired," she said. It came out neutral, almost kind. He snorted once. "You still vanish when someone says your name." He didn't ask the question coiled behind his words. He looked to the ridge and let it go. "We'll be around," he said, and drifted off like smoke. Thompson watched him leave, then turned back to Rachel. He had more questions in time. He settled on the one the after-action would require. "I need to know who stabilized this fight," he said. "Not for the medal board. For the record. We got lucky or we got skill. I need to write the truth." Rachel slid a fresh magazine home and press-checked with her thumb. "Write that your people held," she said. "Write that air arrived at the right time. Write that the enemy made a mistake." He studied her for another long beat. He wasn't fooled, but he was practical. Understood. A breeze pushed through the yard, carrying the smell of hot metal and spent powder. It made the battered flags on the columns mass flutter, like someone trying to relearn how to breathe. The ridge beyond the wire had gone quiet. The sand, disturbed and pitted, began to settle. Ramirez sank to his elbows and let his head drop. I'm going to sleep for a week. You'll inventory your mags, Rachel said. Then sleep. He grinned despite himself. Yes, Sergeant. The general's command bird idled, rotors turning slow and heavy. She stood at its door for a moment, speaking to a man hunched over a tablet that threw green light onto his face. When she finished, she pointed toward Rachel. Thompson caught the gesture. He drew in a breath and nodded. Sergeant Hayes, he said quietly, looks like the general wants your time. Rachel looked down at her hands. They were steady. The rifle felt honest again, cleaned in the only way you can clean a weapon in a fight, by trusting it and letting it do what it was built to do. She set it safe, slung it, and stood. Ramirez touched her elbow. Whatever this is, he said, you saved us. She gave him the smallest of smiles. We saved us, she said. Now drink water. She crossed the yard toward the waiting general, past litters and medics and men picking up brass. Past Webb, who kept his eyes down and his mouth shut. Past the master sergeant, who didn't turn his head but shifted his weight, like a man easing a sore knee. The sun leaned into late afternoon, throwing long shadows across Thunder's broken ground. Somewhere on the ridge, a body lay cooling beside a radio pack and 2 empty RPG tubes. The shot had ended an attack. It had started something else. At the edge of the pad, the general met her halfway. Time for the truth, Sergeant, she said. Rachel nodded once. Yes, ma'am. And the noise of the bass seemed to dim, as if the whole place was listening. The rotor washed tug at uniforms and loose paper. The general stood close enough that Rachel could see the fine dust collected at the hinge of her jaw. Up close, the stars on her collar did not look ceremonial. They looked like weight. Sergeant Hayes, the general said, I am Patricia Knox. We're going to skip the speeches. Yes, ma'am. Knox's gaze went to the rifle slung on Rachel's chest, to the carbine on her hands, then back to her eyes. She lifted a small, rugged tablet from a pouch and tapped the file open. The green glow lit her face. You were declared killed in action 3 years ago, Knox said. Hellman operation designation sealed. Your file shows a memorial at Bragg, a flag presented, a name etched in glass. But the same system that wrote you off just flagged 2 things. A marksmanship score last month that reads like a signature, and an impossible shot 20 minutes ago that saved this base. Rachel said nothing. The truth sat between them like a piece of gear neither of them wanted to carry. Knox did not press. She shifted her grip on the tablet, voice even. People out here call you Sergeant Hayes. I knew you as Master Sergeant Rachel Hayes. Different job, different world. Same person. Webb hovered at the edge of the conversation, pale and rigid. Thompson joined him, posture straight, eyes wary. The graying operator from the ropes showed up without noise and stopped a respectful distance away. He did not interrupt. He wanted to hear it said out loud. Knox's tone softened a fraction. There's a name that was never on paper. People in my world use it anyhow. Ghost. Rachel looked past the general to the ridge. The heat shimmered where the command element had stood. She could pick it out by memory now, the exact slot in the rock where the air had seemed a shade darker. She drew a breath, shallow and steady. I asked to leave it behind. She said, all of it. I asked to be forgettable. I thought I had earned that much. You earned a great many things. Knox said, oblivion is not one of them. Not today. She slid the tablet away and produced a slim folder marked with enough stamps to make a lawyer nervous. She offered it to Rachel. Rachel did not take it. Knox flipped it open herself. Operation Blackwater, Knox said, the day you and your partner held a hill long enough for a pilot to go home. He lived. Your partner did not. After that, you walked off our map. I let the paperwork bury what we knew. Rachel's throat tightened. She saw Stevens as he had been that night, grinning behind a scope, saying something about lousy chow as if they were not counting rounds by touch. She saw the flash that took him and the stillness that followed. She had carried his tags in a desk drawer to make sure she never forgot him. It had not helped. Knox turned a page. We have been tracking a network since then. They know our playbook almost as well as we do. The man you dropped today did not just stumble into command. He trained inside that network. Signals traffic from his net links to the same handlers who built the ambush at Blackwater. Webb took a step forward before he caught himself. You are telling me this attack was tailored for her? Knox did not look at him. I am telling you it did not happen by accident. Thompson swore under his breath. The operator's jaw flexed once, then unlocked. Rachel kept her eyes on the folder. They wanted to see if I was alive. They suspected, Knox said. Now they know. The words landed clean. No comfort, no drama, just fact. Ramirez edged closer and stopped when he realized where he was standing. He backed away 2 steps and pretended to check his magazines. His hands shook anyway. Knox closed the folder and held out again. This time, Rachel took it. The paper was warm from the Afghan sun and the general's hand. I am reactivating you, Knox said. Task Force 88. Effective now. Rachel looked up. Ma'am, I have not been a door kicker in 3 years. I file reports. I check fill rates and radio logs. I am not that person. You were that person today, Knox said, with a broken rifle, under fire. From a platform it was never designed to be. You did it while holding a defensive line together with your voice. If I could issue that as standard kit, I would. Rachel shook her head. That is not how this works. It is not one shot. It is not one day. You know that. Knox did not argue. She let the protest hang, then offered a different route. You do not owe me anything, she said. You do not even owe the Army anything. But you owe the man on that hill who never made it home. The people who set that trap are still moving pieces on this board. You are one of the few who has looked at their hands up close. The operator finally spoke, voice low. We buried you. We put your name on the wall. It would be a relief to believe the wall was wrong. Rachel glanced at him. Thompson, she said, how is the knee? He blinked, surprised, then huffed a laugh. Still clicks. You did that to me in Mosul, if I recall. Wrong wall, bad angle. You picked the wall. I picked the wrong partner that day. He said, I's kind, not unkind. You made up for it later. The exchange loosened something heavy in the air. Webb looked from face to face like a man who had walked into a story mid-chapter. He swallowed. His voice, when it came, was small. I called you dead weight, he said to Rachel. I gave you a bad weapon and a worse attitude. I am sorry. That does not fix anything, but I am saying it anyway. Rachel studied him. The bluster was gone. What remained was a tired officer who had just watched part of his world tilt. She nodded once. Learn from it, she said. Know your people better than you know your opinions. Knox let the moment breathe, then took it back. We lift in 30 minutes, she said. Pack what you need, Sergeant Hayes. Rachel did not move. What is Silent Storm? She said, tapping the folder, beyond the red stamps. Knox's face shifted from persuasive to practical. An interdiction plan aimed at the trainers who keep replacing the leaders you kill. We have a name that pulls the threads together. Call it Al-Rashidi, former ISI, Benning trained. He has been one move ahead for years. He is also the architect of the Blackwater ambush. The ground seemed to tilt again. The sun pressed closer. Rachel kept her voice flat. You are sure as we get, Knox said. Human sources, pattern analysis, traffic that jumped 3 nets the moment the ridge went quiet. He reached into today. He will reach again. I would prefer he find an empty chair when he does. Rachel stared at the folder. She thought of the dog tags on her desk, numbers worn smooth she had never wanted to read aloud. She thought of mornings spent tossing sand, checking wind without meaning to. She thought of a life she had tried to build out of quiet tasks and sunburned days, a life that had crumbled the moment the first mortar landed. I will need gear I do not have, she said, and time on a range that is not a base under attack. You will have both, Knox said, and a team that knows your name. A medic jogged past with a litter. The patient's boot dragged a groove in the dust, then lifted, then dragged again. Rachel stepped clear and let them through. Thompson cleared his throat. "General, we have damage to the eastern wall. Engineers want priority on barriers before night." "Do it," Knox said. She glanced at Webb. "You will stay on the line until they finish. You will also rewrite your comms procedures with someone who understands the difference between volume and clarity." "Yes, ma'am," Webb said. He sounded like he had taken a punch and decided he probably deserved it. The operator looked at Rachel again. "Your kit burned?" he asked. "I never unpacked it," Rachel said. "I told myself that was discipline. It was denial." He nodded like that answer fit something he already knew. "We will stage you and back," he said. "Simple loadout for now. The rest when we land." "Understood." Knox pulled a small velvet pouch from her pocket and handed it over. It felt out of place on a flight line. Rachel opened it and let 2 tags spill into her palm. Not the worn decoy she had kept for show. The real set. Her name. Her number. Oh, negative. No preference. At the bottom, tiny text a civilian would miss. TF-88. She did not put them on right away. She held them a second longer, then looped the chain over her head and slid the metal under her shirt. The weight settled against her sternum, like a truth that had stopped waiting to be told. Ramirez drifted back in, found his courage, and spoke. "What'd I call you now?" he asked. "Sergeant? Master Sergeant? Ghost?" He looked embarrassed as soon as the word left his mouth. Rachel looked at him and, for the first time since the siren started, smiled with her whole face. "Call me Hayes," she said. "Rank is paperwork. Ghost is a story other people tell." He nodded, relieved. "Yes, Hayes." The flight chief waved from the ramp. 30 minutes had become 15. The yard had the purposeful feel of a storm that was leaving. Medics closed bags. Engineers measured holes at the wall with tapes and gloved hands. Someone started a generator that coughed once and settled into a steady hum. Rachel turned to Knox. "After we land," she said, "I want full files on Rashidi. Every op he touched, every handler he burned, everyone he trained, and a list of where he learned to be that good." "You will have it," Knox said, "and you will not be surprised by how many fingerprints match your past." "I am already not surprised," Rachel said. They walked to the aircraft together. Webb stepped aside. He tried to salute and thought better of it. He gave her a rough nod instead, the honest kind. "Thank you," he said, "for today." "You are welcome," she said. "Take care of your people." On the ramp, the operator offered a hand. She took it and climbed. The cabin smelled like hydraulic fluid and cordite, and the faint pepper bite of hot dust. Seats faced inward. Packs were stacked neat as bricks. A headset hung from a hook. She settled into a spot and clipped in. Thompson stood below, looking up. He raised 2 fingers in a small gesture that could have meant luck or respect or both. She returned it. Knox came last, ducked under the rotor disc, and strapped in across from Rachel. The crew chief slammed the ramp. The world narrowed to the thump of blades. The gut tug as the skids lifted. The shrinking shapes of Thunder's walls. Rachel watched the ridge slide sideways under them. The slot in the rock was just a mark now. The shot that had ended the attack had opened a door. On the other side was a man with a familiar playbook and a debt she had been carrying for 3 years. She touched the tags under her shirt once. Quick as a habit, the weight did not feel like punishment anymore. It felt like a job. Silent Storm wheels up in 3. The pilot said in her headset. Rachel lowered her chin and closed her eyes for half a breath. When she opened them, the desert was rolling out ahead, wide and bright. "Copy," she said. "Let's go to work." The helicopter's cabin rattled with every gust rolling off the mountains. Soldiers sat strapped along the benches, faces hidden behind helmets and visors, rifles resting across their laps. Rachel kept her eyes on the floor, watching boot soles tremble with the vibration, hearing the steady chop of the rotors blending with the distant thump of artillery still echoing from Thunder. She didn't need the general's folder to know where this was going. The attack on Thunder had never been about territory. It was bait, a test, a message. She had answered with a bullet across 800 meters of heat shimmer, and now the people who'd orchestrated Blackwater knew Ghost was still breathing. General Knox leaned forward in her harness, her voice steady in Rachel's headset. You understand why this can't wait. Rashidi has played us for years. The fact he reached all the way into Thunder means he's feeling confident. That's when people make mistakes. Rachel's hand brushed the new set of tags under her shirt. And that's when you send ghosts after them. Knox didn't smile. She didn't need to. The forward staging base sat high in the Hindu Kush, little more than steel huts and a makeshift landing zone carved from the side of a barren ridge. As the helicopter descended, the air thinned and cooled. Rachel felt her lungs tighten against the altitude. The operators disembarked with practiced speed, gear slung and weapons ready. Rachel followed, boots crunching against gravel. The air here smelled different, cleaner, sharper. It reminded her of nights years ago when she and Stevens had lain prone for hours, rifle steady, breath slow, bodies fused to the earth like they belonged there. She swallowed hard and pushed the memory down. Inside the ops hut, maps stretched across tables, dotted with pins and scribbled notes. Knox wasted no time. She pointed to a valley choked with switchbacks and narrow choke points. Silent Storm targets a compound here. Satellite confirms heavy fortifications. Radio traffic constant. Every intercept we've traced points to Rashidi's network operating from this hub. He trains commanders, arms them, and feeds them intel we can't explain. If he's not here himself, his lieutenants are. An operator slid a tablet toward Rachel. The screen displayed a grainy image, stone walls, guard towers, a satellite dish angled toward the sky. Rachel leaned closer. This isn't a camp. It's a school. Knox nodded. Exactly. He's not just creating fighters. He's creating commanders. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Rachel's stomach knotted. For years, she'd imagined Stevens dying to buy time against chaos. Now she saw the truth. His death had bought Rashidi time to build order. The mission plan unfolded in deliberate strokes. 2 fire teams would infiltrate the valley under cover of night. Suppression from drones overhead. Exfil via helo once the target was confirmed neutralized. Rachel said nothing until Knox pointed at her. You're not just along for the ride. You know their patterns. You fought their playbook before. You'll be on overwatch, coordinating fire and covering exfil. Silent Storm doesn't launch without you. The room went quiet. Even the operators glanced at her, silent questions behind their lenses. Rachel let the weight of the words sink in. For 3 years she'd hidden in paperwork, convincing herself she'd buried Ghost. But Ghost didn't stay buried. They lingered until unfinished business dragged them back. She exhaled slowly. Then we finished this. Night fell like a curtain. The valley below glowed with faint fires and scattered lights. Through her scope, Rachel tracked figures on the walls, the lazy arcs of flashlights cutting across gravel paths. She whispered wind corrections into the net, her voice low and precise, just as she had hours earlier at Thunder. 3 guards on the east tower, 1 moving inside. Rotation every 12 minutes. Copy, came Thompson's voice from the infill team. Calm clipped, like old times. Rachel adjusted again, eyes flicking to the ridgeline opposite. Something felt wrong. The pattern of lights, the movement too disciplined for local fighters. She keyed the net. Thompson, southwest ridge, 200 meters. Spotters with comms rigs. They're tracking you. Silence. Then understood. Adjusting. Seconds later, muffled shots dropped the spotters. The infill team advanced. Rachel's finger hovered on the trigger, her breath steady. This wasn't a firefight. This was chess. Every piece moved for a reason. The compound erupted just past midnight. Suppressed fires snapped from the shadows, answered by panic shouts inside the walls. Explosions rattled the valley as demo charges shredded gates and barracks. Rachel called targets, her voice steady in the chaos. 2 moving north stairwell, 1 RPG in the courtyard. Sniper on the roof wind, 2 clicks left. Send it. Each correction was answered with silence, then the sound of a body falling. And then she saw him, through shifting smoke, on the roof of the compound, a tall man with a trimmed beard and a radio pack slung across his shoulder. He barked orders with the calm of someone who had rehearsed every contingency. Rashidi. Rachel froze. Her chest tightened like a vice. 3 years of nightmares. 3 years of replaying Stephen's last moments. And here he was. She exhaled and adjusted for distance. The shot was long, but not impossible. Her finger found the trigger. Then Rashidi turned his head. For a split second, Rachel felt his eyes on her across the gulf of darkness and smoke. He smiled. A burst of gunfire drove him backward into cover. The opportunity was gone. Her radio crackled. "Hayes, we gotta move." Charges set. Exfil in 2 mics. She keyed her mic, voice low. Negative confirmation on Rashidi. Repeat negative. "He's alive." Knox's voice cut in. "Copy. Mission still stands. Pull your teams out." Rachel wanted to scream, to push forward, to chase him down and finish what Blackwater had started. But she swallowed it. The mission was a revenge. Not yet. The valley burned as the teams pulled back. The compound collapsed under fire, towers crumbling, flames licking skyward. Helicopters thundered low, rotors sweeping smoke aside. Rachel covered their retreat with surgical precision. Each shot another stitch in the seam holding the team together. When the last operator scrambled aboard, she followed, boots hitting the ramp just as the bird lifted. Inside the cabin, no one spoke. Faces were set, eyes hollow. Victory was measured here not in glory, but in survival. Knox leaned across the bench, voice pitched low for Rachel alone. "You saw him, didn't you?" Rachel met her gaze. "I saw him. And he's not running. He's waiting." Knox nodded, as if she had expected that answer. "Then Silent Storm isn't finished. It's only begun." The mountains rolled beneath them, black against a darker sky. Rachel leaned back, the weight of her tags pressing cold into her skin. She closed her eyes and saw Stephen's grin, the ridge at Blackwater, and Rashidi's smile in the firelight. She opened her eyes again, jaw tight. Ghost had walked back into the war. And this time, she wouldn't stop until the debt was paid.